Recording in progress.
No, I wish I did. I thought my thing in. You okay? Are you in the high school parent chat? You could tell me if they're having issues with the recording. Type the word parent.
I can try. I don't want to be killed about having more. I can't record in the Zoom.
You guys, I have a seat.
Why don't you just have to do it?
It is, but it's not gonna be a good one. Good morning. My name is Abby and I have you for the. Good morning.
You guys split it.
Good morning, everyone, please be seated. Okay, make sure we're in the right place. This is Board Wide. Perfect. Awesome. Well, let's start with introducing ourselves briefly. And then we'll have you introduce yourselves. Bring professional, or read the question. Read the question. We read the question. Okay, perfect. My first time with I can judge. So. I'm Sean McClelland. I'm a federal public defender in Reno, Nevada, and I was in Unit 4 way back in the primordial inclusive time, but very excited to share. I'm Carl Smith. I'm an attorney in the Washington State Attorney General's Office.
Hi, I'm Liz Harris. I'm the judge on the Colorado Board of Appeals. Nice to see you.
Would you mind introducing yourselves?
Hello, my name is Dylan Flores. I'm 14 years old and I can dunk on a 10 foot.
I'm 16 years old and I'm volunteer at Hi, my name is Chloe Haygood. I'm 15 years old and I interned with a state level volunteer. Hi, my name is Brianna Bowman. I'm 15 years old.
Hi, my name is Sam. Very nice to meet all of you. Very impressive accomplishments. I'll read the question. Unit 4, and the question is, the federal government is scarcely in charge of anything except foreign affairs. The state governments really run American society. To what extent did the framers of the Constitution intend for the federal and state governments to share power? How has this balance of power evolved over American history? And how were the powers granted to the federal government delineated in the Constitution compared to those given to state governments? And finally, in contemporary American society, state governments continue to play a dominant role, and what factors contribute to their influence or diminished power compared to the federal government?
Who runs here? The federal government or the states?
In 1835, the states, the federal government scarcely in charge, except one thing. He made these observations in the 50s after the reach.
In 1787, James Madison argued that a strong federal government would prevent chaos.
Thomas Jefferson had warned that this power can be deterred.
Ultimately, they created a federal system of government in which power was divided. As stated by Madison, the powers delegated to the proposed by the proposed constitution, federal government, are field defined. Those which are permitted state governments are numerous of them. Few areas to these powers apply. In McCulloch versus Maryland, the Supreme Court ruled that federal law trumps state law that they could live. The nullification crisis of 1832 saw South Carolina defy federal law, only to be confronted by Jackson. South Carolina, though, was able to influence the tariffs at issue, but had to back down on its claims to a colony.
He took Field's necessity he slightly overstated the limits on federal power in the early 19th century. State governments gained control over domestic issues. However, this dynamic has shifted even further than it had in 1835.
The Civil War settled the question of whether states would secede, reinforcing federal power.
In 19, justified sweeping expansion and Supreme Court between this eventually labor laws and Social Security.
The civil rights movement further tipped the scales. Brown versus Board of Education forced southern states to integrate schools.
Thus,
The Voting Acts Right, 1965, prevented states from being discriminated.
thus, 130 years of publication of parks and here, power and shifting substantially to the federal government and the states.
More recently, states have reclaimed some power in critical areas. The Supreme Court in NFIP Stateless ruled that states could opt out of Medicaid expansion under the Affordable Care Act. The legalization of marijuana in multiple states, despite federal prohibition, demonstrates state defiance of federal authority. During the COVID-19 pandemic, states, not the federal government, determined lockdowns, mask mandates, and vaccination. 63% of Americans say they trust their state governments more than they trust the national.
2022 ballot Johnson returned voting and returned abortion to the states. The extent to which women can access abortion on top of state law is not fair. Stark reminder of the power states take.
Federal government still controls military policy, interstate commerce, and civil rights.
States still lead in education, healthcare, policing, and elections. However, states' reliance on federal funding for 5% of their budget under certain conditions limits their autonomy. This push and pull between federal and state authority will continue. Should state governments be in charge of curricula? Should the federal government intervene in state election laws? Madison wrote that admissions must be made to federal language, and that struggle will still be seen laid out between Washington and states. So, who really runs America? Either the federal government or the states. Our democracy thrives in this balance, ensuring that power remains in the hands of those with service. We the people, and you can.
Thank you very much. We have follow-up questions.
So you talk about how power going sort of back and forth between the federal government and the states. Do you think the current balance of power is sort of what the framers envisioned? Out of whack? Right balance.
I definitely don't think that. Well, I'm just reading the Constitution. I believe they wanted more rule, but where the federal government, the state government would not necessarily interact with each other. But ever since the cooperative era of they've kind of gone back and forth. And now the states are trying to gain power in I think one of the Constitution, they focus on strong centralized government. I'd agree, and I'd also say that that's not inherently a bad thing. Increased cooperation between our federal and state governments allows for our citizens to feel better represented, and also for our government to focus or function as a more unified whole instead of just individual 50 states that function as a country, or just one big looming central government. And although the framers might not necessarily agree or would have wanted our government to be the case today, I still think that they'd be very proud of how well together. Surprised about state in more some state executive branch things of what she trying to, but in like things that it was ruled that it's very strong vision state and national.
I actually disagree with my colleague because I believe that the state's want for power is what Articles of Confederation were. That was a failure.
We talked just now a bit about cooperation, mutual cooperation, state and federal level. I'm curious about non-cooperation mechanisms. Specifically, sounds like nullification is off the table. What kind of nullification mechanisms? What about non-enforcement of federal sanctuary states?
Be the correct quotations. Some states, the federal government said that the executive branch has been for a lot of immigrants, but some states, like sanctuary states, have been kind of pushing back on this and trying to protect immigrants and stuff.
So as a quick follow-up, what's the difference in nullification and non-cooperation?
They just refuse to just follow. But not cooperating is kind of around the law. So, and nullification has more so to do with the technicality of this isn't constitutional, and for that reason.
For the another example that is following, the California in the marijuana legalization, the federal government set a restriction for recreational use of marijuana. California opposes this and set their own laws against the federal.
And to go back to your original question about the non-enforcement, I think that this can actually be related to funding of the federal government to the state governments, because there has been cases where the federal government has said, oh, we're not gonna give this state funding if you don't implement this law. Or I think this can really be related to how sometimes things really need to be enforced, and this is the way that funding, takes.
So let's build on that. You're talking about funding and spending funds. What other provisions in the Constitution itself address the balance of power between states and the federal?
One example could just supremacy laws where states where federal government will issue state laws and set them funding and federal government.
Another example could be it's not a problem. It's the Constitution. Of the states.
You talked a little bit about, states sort of pushing back against the federal government. What about, are there disadvantages to leaving things like personal liberties up to the state? Are there times when you need the federal government to come in force sort of personal rights that people?
Yes, of course. When we think about, for example, I'm going to use the overturning of Roe v. Wade. When that power was given back to the states in Dobbs v. Jackson, we saw a lot of public outrage. People upset that their state might have decided something that they didn't want, or just upset that it was overturned on the federal level itself. And while our states do have very different bodies, for example, populace in Florida is very different from that in Montana, we do also have to consider that we want unity. We want a government that speaks towards what do the 300 million plus American citizens need, what is the common good, and what do we want. And when that's decided at the federal level, it doesn't give states the opportunity to perhaps infringe upon what many people would deem basic human rights that the American people want and need.
Additionally, this can be kind of in the Voting Rights Act, where the states kind of acted as leverage, which they have rights to do, but they kind of, they made laws that infringe upon people, and the Voting Rights Act, and kind of people, it trumps all state laws, that's, did that.
Yeah, just summarizing what they say really depends on what level of problem it is. It's a huge problem, like, I don't know, should be involved, but if it's a more small, little problem, state problem, it's not a problem.
We draw that line between little problems that the state should do and big national problems that the federal government should do.
I think it really depends on the state within itself. And an example of this can be that I think that the states, not the federal government, should help the state in what they think is a big problem or a small problem. Because I believe at the end of the day, people who, or for example, the governor is going to know their state more better than the federal government may know a state. They know their population better, the needs of said population. So I think it's important for states to decide whether it's the problem is something they really want to address, or if it's something less. But of course, if that is not agreed upon, then it can't.
Yeah, doesn't that just get us kind of back to nullification though, if the states are deciding what's important enough to go federal?
Essentially, I mean, what I meant by that is that I think that the populations, that the governors and other high members of the government really know the population in most cases. So if you give an issue to, for example, the legislative branch to go specifically on Wednesday, it might be harder for them to understand the needs of the population and the needs of specific cities and what they need at that housing.
Can I push back the train here on that because we're from Florida?
Yes.
So what about the problem with minority states? So in Florida, it seems like a lot of people really want stricter vote. And nonetheless, that's not gonna happen. So like, what do you do about that sort of a problem? Where your legislature isn't listening?
Then I think in those cases, it should definitely be taken up to a federal level. I think in those cases such as gun control, as you said, it comes to more of an opinion on how that will affect the public safety. So I think if it's about health, safety, or other issues that can be mentioned to human rights, that's and controversial opinions that it can be taken to that level. Because if we do give the states too much power to decide their population, it can become that the states become too isolated. So I think it's very important to find the right balance between when to decide solely on the federal level or the state level. I feel disagree on that. I think that things like that problem should be a state issue. Mainly because of power to do. I think by interpreting power. If the federal government has the power, then they have the power to do national things, but if it's not.
Perfect timing. Thank you very much. We'll briefly do a little bit of feedback. So I'm jumping in, so presiding, okay, fantastic. I'm looking to Carl, he was presiding last. I thought this was really nice. I like your opening statement a lot. You hit really a nice sequence of historical periods in the opening statement, which I thought really helped paint a picture for us. I'm gonna spend most of my time on follow-up, but I thought it was nicely done. As to the follow-up, I again, I thought that was quite nice. There was nice dialogue between all of you. There were some really cool points. I really loved the, like, at one point someone and Harley said, like, going back to the original question to like re-anchor us back onto one of the follow-up questions. I thought that was very effective. And then some nice articulations of viewpoints. Like, I definitely don't think that great line early on. A couple of just things to maybe play with because I can put up another presentation tomorrow. One thing I would be just a little bit wary of is what I call like dog toying, where if I ask a really quick follow-up on someone like pushing back on Harley, it's sometimes helpful to have other people jump in, like say that person. So it's not just like grabbing up the dog toy and it's bad. But I think we still handled it very effectively. Even though it was kind of a point to follow. One additional area that you could explore is the anti-commandeering cases about limits on the federal government's power, like require states to do things. But that's kind of just a small point in a rather broad picture here. Again, I thought this was nice. You had nice answers that were well thought out. Took us into, you know, potentially controversial territory, but nice and done. So I like to thank you.
Great job, Unit 4. Really enjoyed your presentation. I mentioned that I am an attorney in the state attorney general's office, and so you mentioned the birthright case, like that our office is bringing. I just filed a lawsuit against the administration relating to the elections executive order. So I thought you did a really nice job bringing in that contemporary material in an appropriate and thoughtful way. In your opening statement, I love the breadth of examples you gave us. You started out by rooting us in the founding era and the tensions and the viewpoints, which is exactly the beginning of the call of the question. But then you also took us through history. I think there's often a tension to start at the founding era and then jump to the modern day. And you talked about the Civil War. You talked about you know, other parts of our constitutional history, which is really fantastic and noteworthy. I always like to give teams a little something to build on, you know, to continue to refine these presentations. A little more constitutional text would have been great. Talk to me about some of the specific clauses. I remember if we talked about the Commerce Clause or not. There's also the Elections Clause. Again, these are just little things you can kind of toss in there. I think you know them. Just as you know, you're here to show us what you know, and you showed us a whole lot. But throwing those little specific provisions, you really think to the next level still. But yeah, I really like the presentation, a great balance among yourselves. And I really like that you use disagreement with one another at times to show your sophisticated understanding of concepts you're addressing. Nice job.
Thank you. I don't have too much to add. I really liked your opening. Like Carl said, I liked that it was very linear. To follow, and also the linear aspect of it highlighted the fact that there are these kind of like pivot points throughout history. So I thought you guys did a really good job emphasizing. And I thought the way that you answer questions, just it really came across like you know the material well. And you are engaging in an actual real time thought, like so I thought the presentation, the delivery was really good, and so was the conference.
Thank you.
And thanks to your teacher and any family members in the audience as well. This was great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning. Have a good day.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Good job.
Congratulations. So you have to be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Lord Jesus.
No, okay, you're gonna go back to stage. Don't put it, I'm just saying that.
Yeah.
I know, no. Right. I'm sure you're gonna see some short stuff. My phone is within the group chat. You know, I guess I'm like 3:40. What? 3:40, 3 to 4 minutes to share shopping, so that's okay. I suggest you time, but that she suggests you. I don't want her to. Yeah, I'm sure you're just saying. Those two teachers are sure. Right, and you're a teacher?
I'm a parent.
You're always at home. Tell by that.
Yeah, she was. Yeah. That's why.
Yeah. I think some of the wild cards. I feel like yeah. Yeah, I'm green, by the way. I'm remembering all of that. Yeah, thanks. I'm just watching some of these scores. Oh, I actually support. But yeah, don't forget about that. Okay, yeah, cool. Yeah, thank you.
How's the last year kids?
It went really well. It was really good.
You try to read the lips from outside, like.
No, yeah, no, they were very impressed. They all did. Stand.
Please be seated.
You have nice sunshine here. These interior rooms are not quite so nice. We're going to introduce ourselves to you and then ask you to do the same, as well as the commission coach. I'm Jim Sweeney. I'm a federal judge in the Southern District.
Good morning. My name is Britt Cremeyer. I'm a We the People alum, so I know how you're feeling right about now, from Las Vegas, Nevada. I currently reside in the state of Washington, where I am a criminal defense attorney for the public.
Hi, my name is Doug Rand. I work for the Nevada Office of the Attorney General. I work for the Department of Corrections as a inmate civil rights litigator. And for about 6 years, practicing law for about 30. And I'm not an alum of We the People, but my daughter got me into it when she was in high school. So I've been around a while. I'm sure you people from Florida are just loving this weather.
Well, good morning to all of you. I get to house Mosby, 5 cycles. Good morning, my name is Joshua Milford and I've been singing for 8 years.
Good morning, my name is Cassie Cotier, and I like to run track here and play basketball.
Good morning, my name is Ayan Beg, and my favorite Federalist paper is Federalist 39.
Good morning, my name is Cynthia Laughlin, and I've been scuba dive certified since I was 12.
And your coach?
Oh, and these are our coaches.
And they are?
I'm Kristen Murphy. How are you? I'm an attorney and their teacher.
Morning, Will Murphy, I'm an attorney mediator up tree.
Great, thanks. I can hear this environmental control system over here, and so it's kind of drowning you out. Just be cognizant of that, maybe speak up. What question would you all like to do today? What question would you all like to do today?
We would like to do question 1, the exclusionary.
Perfect, that's what we're gonna do. Good choice. The modern exclusionary rule draws no strength from the deeply rooted American ideal of innocence protection. Instead, the rule perversely benefits the guilty as such. You agree or disagree? No one read the bar's position on the exclusionary rule. Why? How does the exclusionary rule function within the American legal system? In your view, does it protect justice or undermines? What alternative methods do the courts use to address violations of the amendment? What are the potential benefits, drawbacks of those approaches? You may proceed with Greg.
You're accused of a crime. The police broke into your house without a warrant, searched your belongings, and seized evidence against you.
Now, should this evidence really be admissible in court? Should it be thrown out to the interior government or reach?
This is the heart of the exclusionary rule, a doctrine that sparks fire debate over public trust, constitutional principles, and actually the legality of the exclusionary rule.
American legal scholar Akil Reed Amar believed that the exclusionary rule attractively benefits the guilty far more than the innocent. He argues that the rule is a flawed judicial invention that disregards the traditional American protections for the innocent. Instead, Amar suggests alternative remedies, such as internal police discipline, civil lawsuits, or prosecutorial oversight. This could deter misconduct without allowing guilty individuals to escape justice. We disagree with Amar's proposal. The exclusionary rule takes away an incentive for law enforcement to obtain evidence unlawfully.
This doctrine, rooted in the Fourth Amendment's exclusion protections against unreasonable searches and seizures, was first established in the United States in 1914 at the federal level, then extended to the state level in Map B, Ohio in 1960.
Amar is right. The exclusionary rule does sometimes let the guilty go off free. However, it does one thing for sure. It allows citizens to actually be
It allows citizens to not fear that the police may deter misconduct and enter their houses illegally.
We disagree with Amar's conclusion that the rule inherently harms justice. It helps ensure that convictions are based on lawfully obtained evidence, safeguarding against wrongful convictions, and ensuring that civil rights are not undermined.
The Supreme Court has balanced exceptions with this doctrine. Take, for example, the good faith exception. Established in United States v. Leon, it allows evidence of officers acting with honest intent. The inevitable discovery doctrine established in Nix v. Williams, 1984, allows evidence that would have been inevitably been found through lawful means. These exceptions help prevent criminals from escaping justice on technicalities while still deterring police misconduct.
In cases like Terry v. Ohio, the courts have given law enforcement ample latitude to collect evidence lawfully.
Given concerns about letting criminals go free, some propose alternative methods to hold witnesses accountable without disregarding their constitutional protections.
One method would be civil lawsuits against officers and police departments. Although this would directly penalize misconduct while allowing evidence in court, officers often have qualified immunity, making lawsuits difficult to pursue successfully.
Another alternative would be judicial oversight boards. This will call for legislative action and it would take significant labor to implement, but it would allow independent review of constitutional violations without dismissing evidence.
While the exclusionary rule may occasionally benefit the guilty and allow defendants to escape justice, allowing illegally obtained evidence would degrade public trust in the justice system and normalize violations of individual rights.
Justice Louis Brandeis famously put it in Olmsted v. United States, quote, "The government teaches by example. If the government becomes a lawbreaker, it breeds contempt for the law."
The rule reflects a commitment to mere outcome and fair process over mere outcome. We agree with the bill's judicial invention that it benefits the guilty, but it also is necessary.
The question is not whether we should get rid of the rule, but how can police accountability be strengthened? Whether that is through prosecutorial oversight or criminal lawsuits, but the balance between liberty and public trust must be maintained.
Thank you.
All right, so how does this all work? You mentioned in your paper that there is somebody's accused of a crime, police come in, they don't have a valid warrant. Find some incriminating evidence. What happens next?
Well, in that sense, are we talking about a warrant that was normally invalid or that was unpurposely invalid? Because if it was unpurposely invalid, then through the good faith exception, that evidence is still admissible as it wasn't purposeful. Now, if it's with a warrant that is like purposely invalid or without a warrant at all. Now, if the police collect this evidence, it would not be thrown out as they have broken the law. They have gone against the Fourth Amendment by doing an illegal search and seizure, causing the evidence to now be dismissed.
And who makes that decision? How does that get to that point?
Well, most of the time it can be addressed in pre-trial matters between like attorneys before an actual court case. And depending on how big of the evidence was, that would then possibly overthrow the case completely if the evidence was like a significant part, if it's brought up in pre-trial matters. But now if this is done in court, like during an actual trial, then that would just cause the judge to then tell the jury to disregard that information as it should have been allowed in court in the first place.
Oh, adding on to my colleague, according to a 2013 research paper published by the Harvard Law Journal of Medicine, I believe they concluded that the exclusionary rule, it basically kind of complicates prosecution procedural rights, as they noted.
And going back to your original question of how does it all work, I would honestly say it depends. For example, you can search without a warrant if you have reasonable probable cause. However, if a police officer has a warrant for, let's say, a knife they assumed I used to murder somebody, but then they find a pot garden in my bathroom, they can't use that evidence against me because that's not what they went to find. They went to find a knife in my drawer, but found a pot garden in the bathroom.
What about if the pot garden is in plain sight in your bathroom and you're searching for the knife? Can't they still use that against?
Of course, because it was in plain sight.
like to further what my colleague said, another example of this would be like, for instance, say if they think I'm harboring like a criminal in my house. If they were to try to find them, but they look at my medicine cabinet and they find like illegal drugs in my medicine cabinet while they're trying to look for a person, that would then be illegal as, you know, a person can't be in my medicine cabinet and it's not in plain sight, then not making the evidence admissible in court.
I want to switch,
Oh, go ahead.
I want to switch gears. So your proposition is you would rather let one guilty person go free than an innocent person be convicted.
Well, I would actually like to disagree with that. I know it says in my opening, but I have my own opinions. Take, for example, according to a 2018 study done by the National Registry, they found that approximately 24% of evidence has been 24% of evidence was lost, or illegal evidence obtained was completely expelled. Meaning 24% of these guilty people got off free. I believe a better situation for this is to simply just, as Yale puts it in a 2015 paper, we can just publish civil lawsuits against officers and maybe take away their immunity.
I'd like to add on to my colleague, after the case Map in Ohio, the percentage of warrant usage went from a 6% to a whopping 90%, a 1,500% increase. So we can't exactly quantify how many innocent people haven't been convicted because of the exclusionary rule. But I would say that undoubtedly it is much greater than the amount of people that have been that have been let free.
To add on to my colleague again, I believe in 2016, a survey was conducted finding that because of the good faith exception, 30% of evidence was suppressed. I believe when you have these exceptions constantly being added and the rights just being constantly, the scope of the exclusionary being scoped out. For example, I believe last year, North Birmingham versus I don't know the case, but it's like Birchington. It was a Supreme Court case where it was a Supreme Court case where officer tested someone's breath, tested someone's blood test. What? No, thank you. Where an officer used an unwarranted blood test. When the person later sued for a violation of their 14th Amendment, the Supreme Court found that yes, while the officer cannot force a blood test, they can, however, force a breath test. I believe scopes like these constantly are changing the exclusionary rule and basically making it inadequate for our democracy today.
In my own experience, about 50% of the cases that I've given a summary judgment on various issues, but a lot of it is on qualified immunity. And it's something that keeps a lot of those cases out of the court system. If you get rid of qualified immunity, do you think there would be an increase in civil lawsuits and basically clogging our court system?
Definitely. I feel like it really depends on the circumstance. Because, for instance, if all police are like, if the immunity is removed, that can kind of instill fear into police, which could kind of restrict them from completely carrying out their job, as they're scared to be persecuted for something they may do, which could then lead them to not really use their position to the fullest extent.
Also, I'd like to say that if qualified immunity were to be removed, it would inherently increase the amount of cases, but it may also be a negative, not just because it is increasing the amount of cases, but because of the various cases that might be false or the various cases that might be posed against officers or not for false reasons.
Yeah, to add on to my colleague Joshua, I believe we could see this in the 1919 to 1920 Palmer raids. These were raids where the police conducted unwarrantless searches. But however, the exclusionary rule, we can use this to deter basically police misconduct. I believe if we have stuff like if we don't have qualified immunity, we can see more civil cases being in. Maybe that's a good thing.
So the exclusionary rule is the means by which a court excludes evidence. Can the prosecution evidence be used against defendant? Can the prosecution withhold it?
You asked if the prosecution can withhold evidence. As it is their case, I believe they can withhold evidence. Like, they don't have to use evidence if they don't want to. They could choose as to what they present in court.
Let me be clear in my question. Can they withhold evidence from the defendant?
Oh, no.
Why not?
Because they have to like, they can't withhold evidence from the defendant because they have to, what's the word? They have to tell them, they have to tell them about their like crimes and stuff. So they have to like inform the defendant as to what they're being charged with and why.
Go ahead.
I'd like to add, well, to elaborate, I'd like to say that due to due process, you would have to show, you have to first inform them what they're being charged with. And if you wanna, you can't restrict what they're being charged with and restrict what evidence you're using against.
Well, nice job. Wow, just right out of starting gate, you got my attention. Very theatrical, which is something that happens at Congress all the time before committee. You want to get the message across. I thought you really worked well with each other to get that message across. And even though you had some disagreements, they were respectful disagreements, good citation that, gosh, studied court cases. Such one court case you may want to tuck in the back of your mind is Brady versus Ohio. So that says that you have to disclose all evidence to the defendant. For example, maybe points the finger at somebody else, right? So that would be a legal exclusion of evidence if the government does that. And then you just continue to bounce. So really nice job.
I echo what my Judge Sweeney said. The prosecution hides behind it and said it's not exculpatory. I have fights about this constantly as a defense attorney. Well done. You guys have such exceptional passion. It was beautiful. I take 1 week vacation to volunteer and it inspires me. It just reinvigorates me, and you guys definitely did that today. I needed it. I get beat down in my job. I mean, I find it funny that I'm a defense attorney. I'm hated by everybody. I'm 90% the most hated person in the courtroom. And I come here and you just remind me that it's gonna be okay. You guys are taking the reins. We're gonna be fine. I hope that whatever you decide to do in your careers, that you remember this moment, that you made it to nationals, and that you are singular in all that you have accomplished thus far in your life. So just give yourselves a round of applause and your instructor.
I just echo what everybody said. I told people before I wasn't involved in anything like this when I was in high school. It had anything when I was in high school. It was a long time ago, so I'm old, so. But I got involved in the program when my daughter was in high school. And I could see how the things that you know now, I could tell people. I knew there was a constitutional when I was in high school, but that's about it. I didn't know the detail of exclusionary rule. We were able to talk to people. I thought you did a great job in presentation. I thought you did a great job in your response to questions. Just did great.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Appreciate it.
It was lovely.
Nice job.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Great. You guys did a great job.
Thank you. I think I recognize you from online.
Yeah.
Competition.
Thank you so much, guys.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. Good job.
Yeah. Yes.
Excuse me.
Yep. So people do classes and they're the rest is my shit. So you can tell your class to be quiet during the session because they're like practicing their speeches out loud and like so tell them like you can say it keeps them on board members and you just hear them. All right, so make sure their speeches because they have judges. No, it's okay.
Pharmacy, of course I know.
I know, you know that by heart.
It is 6291.
Okay, 6291.
Yeah.
I'm trying to have a patient prescribe something.
restless, noisy, unfocused.
I have a delivery over here.
Oh, okay.
And shuffling papers and trash, and say it was bad for us. So we want to go up front, she says, and just not.
I haven't been here in a while. I forget
We
the
want to
extensions.
go outside and miss this round. No, she doesn't think so, but. Okay, so.
Hi, Sophia, do you have any family for you?
I gotta get
Andrew?
the stuff.
Injury? Anything? Oh, thank you.
I guess we Yes.
All right, good morning. Is Mr. Cabrera there? Hi, my name is Charlie, calling from Memorial Hospital West. Oh, okay. We'll call back, okay? All right, thank you. Bye.
Yeah.
Hi, is this Louis?
Yeah, it's like all you did.
Hi, I'm calling from recovery. I'm just letting you know that he's in the second phase of recovery now. I don't know if you want to come and sit with him. Okay. He's on the second floor, the same area that came through pre-op. I don't know if you've seen him in post-op, but it's the same area. You walk through the double doors. You make a left and he is in spot 35 now. Okay. Thank you. No problem. Okay.
Hi, good morning. Is Michael there? I'm good. How are you? This is Ari calling from Memorial Hospital West just to see how you're doing after your procedure.
It's Kim, nice to meet you.
That is great. And how was your visit to the hospital?
Hi, this is Rebecca. I'm calling from recovery to check this out for my patient's medication.
All right.
Do you want to?
The beer. Oh, listen, well, right.
Nice.
All right. Well, we wish you the best, okay? All right. Have a good one. Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yes. So my patient is in post-endo, so we need medication delivery.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Okay.
I,
Hey, parents, can you mute your phones? We're hearing everything in the
oh,
offices
okay, I haven't
that
looked
you're
at
in.
that. I just received him from another.
Good morning. I would encourage you to kind of watch videos and mute because for some reason this morning, my phone has come off of mute twice without me touching it. So that's just a heads up to everyone. You might want to just keep checking your device to make sure we stay on mute and cameras off.
Yeah. I just.
Is that for all the parents?
The parents on.
Or you have your camera on? Mhm. S&P 500.
Yeah, I want to tell one, it doesn't matter, each that.
What you trying to do? Hello?
Guys, can you move up to the front seats?
Oh, there's up front.
Yeah, the front. Yeah, you can't. Yeah, all right, they're bringing in. Ava, engaged in a business. Yes. Stand. Good morning.
Morning, how are you guys? How are you? Good. Fabulous. Yes, have a seat. Take a deep breath. Right. Welcome, good morning. We're gonna introduce ourselves, and then we'd love for you to do the same. And then we'll get into some fun, nerdy conversations. Sound good? Definitely. Fabulous. My name is Trish Everett. I was a student in We the People and then coached my own team for a bunch of years. And now I coach other teachers in Fort Lauderdale.
Oh, hi, let's talk after.
My name is Susan Jorgensen. I am also an alumni of Unit 6, and I currently teach criminal justice up in Washington State.
And I'm Corinne Henderson. I'm also one of Unit 6 and with National Award so many years ago. But I've stayed involved in the program ever since as a volunteer, judge, whatever else they like. So, all right, now please introduce yourselves.
So nice to meet you guys. My name is Carly Brown. I'm 16 and I like to volunteer. Hi, my name is Carrie. Carrie's also name is I'm 14 and I like to guys support. Hello, my name is Asher Wilson. I'm 15 years old and I'm 28. Hi, my name is Brianna and I'm 15 years old and I'm 12.
Hi, my name is Isaac Kamal. I'm 16 years old and I conduct a basketball.
Hey, and could you introduce your coach? This is our coach, Kristen Murphy. She's our ball teacher.
And this is.
Husband, Mr. Murphy. He's on one of our coaches. He is a art teacher.
Morning.
Nice to meet you. All right. You are Unit 6? Yeah. Fabulous. Today for Unit 6, we are looking at question 2. The bicentennial celebration of the Marquis de Lafayette's farewell tour, which began on August 16th, 2024, marks a significant historical moment. How did Lafayette's views on federalism, the balance of power, and individual rights align with or challenge the principles of American constitutional democracy in 1824? How did Lafayette's experiences with American democracy influence his advocacy for democratic ideals in France and other nations? And what lessons does Lafayette's 1824 farewell tour offer about the enduring principles of liberty, equality, and justice in American democracy? And how do these ideals shape current debates on rights and inclusion?
Everyone give it up for America's favorite fighting Frenchman, Lafayette.
Lafayette eloquently stated to the French National Assembly on July 11, 1789, that nature has made men free and equal. The distinctions necessary for social order are only founded on general utility. Here he states and advocates for equal protections and freedom for everyone. Lafayette strongly championed equality, individual freedoms, and freedom from monarchies, principles that both aligned with and challenged American constitutional democracy in 1824. One major difference was Lafayette's stance on slavery. While the U.S. allowed slavery, Lafayette played a key role in the abolition of slavery in France. He even petitioned George Washington to abolish slavery in America. Lafayette also funded an experimental plantation in French Guiana, where enslaved individuals could work for wages and eventually earn their freedom, and promoted a model for gradual abolition.
Another distinction was Lafayette's preference for a strong central government over the American model of federalism.
Lafayette supported a constitutional monarchy in France,
which combined elements of centralized government with strong protections for individual rights, a model that reflected his belief in balancing authority with liberty. While he admired the U.S.'s emphasis on individual freedoms and beliefs, he believed that a more centralized structure was necessary to ensure social stability and to protect said freedoms.
However, Lafayette did share some common ground with Americans, such as the need for balance of powers and the importance of protecting individual freedoms, like freedom of speech.
Lafayette's experiences with American democracy deeply shaped his advocacy for democratic ideals, not just in France, but across Europe and Latin America. His participation in the American Revolution and his subsequent involvement in the French Revolution, fighting for individual rights, each left indelible marks on him. Each helped him lead to argue that political power should be derived from the people.
As he traveled to all 24 U.S. states in 1824, his farewell tour served as both a reflection of the successes of the American experiment and an opportunity to reconnect with the country he had helped shape. His tour reminded Americans of the ideals that had united the colonies during the Revolution, reinforcing principles of liberty, equality, and a shared national identity amidst growing sections.
His tour of the United States served as a reminder of the enduring principles of liberty and equality, and his advocacy for these ideals continue to influence movements for democracy today.
Lafayette, the farewell tour of 1812 also offers important insights about liberty, equality, and justice in American Constitution and democracy.
At a time when America was still grappling with internal conflicts, such as the institution of slavery, Lafayette's message of unity and democratic ideals helped rekindle national spirit and reminded Americans of the unity they had fought for during the Revolution.
Today, Lafayette's message resonates in the ongoing debates about rights and inclusion, where questions of equality, justice, and individual freedoms continue to shape American democracy.
His call for a government grounded in the ideals of liberty, equality, and justice for all can still serve as a guiding light in addressing the challenges we face as a country today. Thank you.
In addition to the principles that Lafayette fought for, he is also seen as somebody who, his importance is also as like an external validator. You know, it's like, don't just believe us, you know, believe this French student too, you know, he agrees with us. And so for the US today, especially, what is the importance of having strong allies who can affirm our position globally as a strong nation?
Well, if the United States were to ever be in conflict or need to go to war against a country, we would have nations fighting beside us. Historically, the United States has had a history of remaining neutral, like in World War II, but also we have been allies to many other countries, which is currently being an issue that is being debated on with the Trump executive.
So you mentioned in your opening statement that France has a constitutional monarchy, right? But America has a republic and we got rid of the king. So is that consistent? Like how can Lafayette argue for a republic here and a constitutional monarchy there?
Well, I think since he was so involved with the American Revolution, he really had a good and subsequent understanding of what the Americans really wanted and what they thought would best serve their country or all countries. So when he goes back to France and he thinks about his ideals for what he wants for his own country, yes, it might be different, but I think that it just goes to show how much of a supporting person he was, because he didn't push his ideals on to a country that wasn't necessarily his, but when it came to being a leader in his own, he was still very adequate and if not one of the most successful French leaders at the time.
Because of what Lafayette saw in America and what he was really like influenced with the democratic ideas and stuff. So when he came back to France, that's why he came up with his draft of the Declaration of Rights of Men. So it really influenced him to put this out and for the French to maybe consider more of an equal society instead of having.
So Lafayette is a figure known for kind of his prominence and influence in both France and America. I used to have a professor who said he was American, he just wasn't born here because of how much he agreed with the ideals of the American founding. Do you think the same could be said of Lafayette?
I would say yes, in essence.
Okay.
He definitely very much approved. Yes, he did have some conflicting ideas in terms of the way that he valued a super heavily centralized government, which was conflicting with some of the other framers thought about how they wanted more control on the state level. But I don't think that it was necessarily a problem with him specifically, because like I said before, I still think that his ideals were very prevalent in France. And when he came here, yes, I'm sure he tried to instill some of them, but when he noticed that this wasn't necessarily what the Americans wanted for their country, he didn't push for it.
I would kind of disagree. I don't think that Lafayette's really, even though he had a strong role in the American Revolution, I don't think he's necessarily seen as like an American person. He just, as Carly said, he disagreed with a lot of more ideals. I think if he were to, he wouldn't agree with the medieval framers' beliefs back then. I think he would agree with more modern beliefs because of things like the 15th Amendment or the 19th Amendment. I think he would agree with modern beliefs.
But I also think it's really important to note the fact that his influence wasn't only prominent in France and in the Americas, it was also very important to Latin America at the time, especially since they were going through their own movement separate from the Americas. His influence and everything that he wanted and his ideals of being an ally to America was super important of how the Spanish or the South American Revolution also progressed.
So one of the things that Lafayette is also known for is that he didn't just promote, you know, these values. He promoted this idea of American exceptionalism, that we have a unique place in history and around the globe. How important is that idea to the success of America, both throughout its history and is it still relevant today?
Well, one concept of American exceptionalism could be its large republic. And its large republic has and would protect against factions and possibly the harms of political parties. So I think that America still derives a lot of the content it had in the 1700s. And I definitely think that's a lot of the roles for one.
But also, I think that he believed that the US was so exceptional because of the fact that really nothing like the American Revolution had ever happened in history before. Even going back all the way to the Mongols, nothing had ever been run by the people for the people. And I think it is so important for not only the French at the time, but for also current citizens to realize that America is so different and that the opportunities that it has here were made by these people who really had the future's best interests in mind.
So piggybacking on that last question, you say that Lafayette had a good argument at the time that we were exceptional. We're the first ones, and then it spreads to Latin America, like we're talking about in other places. Do you think we still are?
Still are exceptional?
Yeah. Oh, and that's to everyone. That's not just.
Yeah, I think America's constitution of democracy is very exceptional. We have a system where we are represented we're represented by representatives who we elect, and this directly puts the power to the people.
To balance my quality, I feel like I'm an American still are because America, people are able to say how they feel, and it's more of like an equal society in a way. In other places, there aren't. They don't get to say how they feel, and there's always someone who tells them and controls them. So I feel like in America, we are equal still.
To add on to my colleague, I feel as if one of Lafayette's biggest ideals was equality. And I feel in our society today, I feel as if we've reached that in a certain sense.
So Isaac, I feel that America set the groundwork for some of the different types of government and different laws and things that you can see reflected in other countries that weren't necessarily there before America decided to go out and take this bold step and create their own form of government and create a whole new land.
Okay, so when he started getting involved in the American Revolution, he was, if I remember it correctly, like 19, 20 years old. But most often when we talk about voter participation in modern US, the younger voters are the least involved or statistically least likely to show up. So do you think there could be a Lafayette among your generation today, or are your people not of Lafayette's caliber?
I think that one of the reasons that Lafayette was so involved from such a young age was sort of due to how his family was very aristocratic in France, which was of course a great benefit from coming to the US. But also I think that a new Lafayette could be created, or multiple even, from kids like us taking classes like this or engaging in civic participation like this. And that's a reason that I think that it's not prominent in most young people today, is because the education of civics isn't common, or it's not as extended as it should be. Me taking this class and doing these things has definitely made me such a better person in my knowledge of when I'm 18, I'm definitely gonna go vote, register to vote. And I think it's so important.
And that's my opinion.
Tell us.
That's my opinion. I believe that a new Lafayette could very well be sitting in this building right now. But I think that the polarized climate that's going on right now, I think that's disenfranchising some young voters, or people sitting in this room right now may not want to go against what the people sitting in office right now necessarily, because of what they say. And it may not they may feel disenfranchised to vote, or even to speak on their own opinions, because they could go through cyberbullying, so people could not agree with them and necessarily yell at them online. Or honestly, they can send the people that speak out on their own opinions can be hurt and necessarily not want to participate again.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Really fantastic conversation. In your prepared statement, I mean, start on. Who doesn't love a little Hamilton shout out? So I really appreciated your ability to kind of hopscotch through the timeline of mentioning neutrality in World War II, back to earlier references or earlier historical events. You really were able to collect the fingerprints of Lafayette's influence across the timeline of American history, far beyond the dates of his life. I think going forward, having some additional examples kind of in your pocket, ready to pull out. But I mean, you hit Latin America, you hit Fed 10, you got very nicely done.
I agree. I like the hints for the it's the hints. It's the Lafayette thing at the beginning. And you also had some, I'm a public speaking coach also. You had some good polished, speaking skills at the beginning, which I appreciated. I appreciate that you guys are younger, right? So a lot of these classes are senior classes, and you guys are like maybe freshmen, sophomores. And so you have a very good handle on some of this information, having not necessarily gone through the same historical classes the other kids have. So that's very hard. So I appreciate that. I'm also a world history teacher, great. So Latin American revolutions, the expansion of the French Revolution, other places. I appreciate your conversation there. Yeah, and I do encourage you to think, who's the Lafayette of your generation? Like, who's willing to stand up and speak truth to power when it's dangerous? Would be an interesting thing to keep talking about on your flight home, right? Eventually at the end of the competition. Yeah.
Just adding on to what my colleague said to you, we had a rich conversation. You're very responsive to our questions, but we still got to ask, I think, more questions than we usually do. And so it was a nice balance of you being, again, responsive, bringing in some examples that are not necessarily just in Unit 6, but from your learning across the board in this course. And then that discussion at the end, I mean, I got a little bit of chills because that what you were talking about, that's why you're here. And to see some of that coming to life, to see that come to fruition. And so your appreciation for the importance of what you're doing here today really came through, and that was very special. So thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think you very good sit down. Thank you so much. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'll find your.
Thank you. Kristen Dotberg, if you ever out of school,
Thank you.
Look at Miss Murphy making friends.
Thank you.
It's recording.
Yeah, it's a Zoom call. You want to say hi to your parents?
Hey, big 954, that's what you're gonna say.
All right, nicely done, guys. Nicely done.
I was about to say Elon Musk.
I asked you the question.
No, I said it. I was
About
to
the
say-
current Lafayette. You were throwing out.
Asking, I was like.
Come on, I was waiting for you to throw out your, remember your answers on the train? You guys did a good job.
Something like, or.
Why do you look sad? You did a good job.
I'm sad, I'm just tired.
Oh, yeah, we're all
I'm mad
tired.
about my last.
Can you put your name tags down?
Emotional, it was moving.
Hi, parents. If you're watching the first unit that went, which was unit 3, I recorded the whole thing, but I didn't have the Zoom link yet. So I'll send it in the chat.
Speaking to our fans.
Thank you.
Like, follow,
Great job.
subscribe.
I wanna like, follow and subscribe. Yeah.
Alright, now it's on, right? Hey, guys.
They have to take back.
Whatever. How many people are in
It's
here?
over here.
Y'all. We don't win national winners.
Mom, if they're watching this, hi. Dad, if you're watching this, hi.
Guys, I'm just a little intermission. It's a commercial break, so.
She's gonna scare away our fans, Miss Murphy.
Guys, anyways, they're setting up for unit 1 and I'm actually unit 1.
They can't even see your face.
They can't see my face?
No.
This is unit 1 setting up right now. I'm unit 2, so you gotta tune back in, like really tune back in with about 15 minutes, y'all, okay? Anaya, come on, why am I doing a commercial break by myself?
Okay.
Anyways, we love you guys, your support for Washington, the WC.
Okay. I hope we're really engaging your entertainment, guys.
Anyways, yeah, guys. You gotta know what the House of Burgesses is. The Mayflower Compact. Oh, Cindy said hi to her mom, guys. Anyways, bye, guys. Commercial break is over.
Okay, get out of the screen.
How giddy did I look?
It's crazy.
Miss Murphy, no, bro. I'm about to get lit with this today, and oh my god.
I'm gonna do a handstand.
Hold on, I gotta clip this. Do a backflip with it. Do a split with it. Do a split with it. Come on, Miss Murphy. Come on, Miss Murphy. Hold on, hold on. Oh yeah, photo. Hey. I think we shouldn't tell them about when she got kicked out the cart. Guys, don't tell Miss Murphy got kicked out of the shopping cart yesterday. Bro, she was like a big kid in the shopping cart, bro.
I can do a handstand.
I can't against the wall.
Yes.
Against the wall, handstand this bad boy.
Yeah.
Now, but when it
Okay, got you. I shall be doing that.
We should stream the rest of
But
the.
my parents are watching it.
Oh, I mean, like stream the rest of this trip. That would be kind of lit. No, guys.
Then you can't misbehave, Samara.
Okay, that's fine.
Because your mom will be watching.
Guys, hey mom, I'm coming. Guys, we should stream the rest of the trip, right? It's commercial break.
But my parents are watching this.
We know we would be rap.
I'm up last, no.
No, I'm a plus.
It's the winners, chicken dinner, send the haters back to the.
Okay, where are we supposed to get back to stick to the people?
I'm just like Florida, like nobody understands like to represent Florida, like Miami at that. We're not from Miami. Yes, we are.
We are from Fort Lauderdale.
Okay, but it just sounds better Miami. Oh, still Miami. What is it called? The Spanish girl thing? In the Miami song? So, hey, hey, welcome to Miami, Bienvenido a Miami. Anaya's mom.
I saw you in the chat.
Hey, Anaya's mom. Hi, Anaya's mom. Wait, hold on. Say something else in the chat. Where's the chat?
I just saw pop out on the screen. She said she loves our energy.
Wait, Anaya's mom. Hold on.
Yes.
We're gone. Yeah, We gotta have some celebration for you after, okay?
Hey, I'm so sorry.
Doubles? Question mark? Sorry. Making sharp? Okay, I'm leaving now. It's starting soon. Bye, guys. You think they're my actual fans?
I saw my mom. She's actually watching me.
I'm sorry, you can hear the audio recordings, you can record it back to the same line. So one piece.
All right, are we? So whatever page you want to put to.
Yes.
I feel like, you know, it's like overpriced. That's good. I like the overpriced.
Miss Murphy.
See.
Wait.
You got this, guys?
Great.
Stand. Stand.
Good
Morning.
Welcome to your one judging panel, and I am Amelia Beauchene, your timekeeper for today.
Hello, good morning. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Morning, be seated. We will introduce ourselves and give you a chance to do the same. My name is Chief Massey. I work with the Maryland Civic Education Coalition. I'm a former classroom teacher and took students to We the People contest and how exciting and a little intimidating it can be. Take a breath. Got this.
Thank you. Good morning. You're so far away, I gotta project. My name is Zalal Bogala. I'm an environmental justice attorney and a professor at the University of Nevada. I'm an alumnus of this program, most importantly, and I serve on the Center for Civic Education's National Advisory Board, helping write the new textbook for We the People as well. Nice to be here.
Hi, I'm John Cousins, and I'm a businessman, entrepreneur, investor, author, and a business professional.
Want to introduce yourselves?
Hi, good morning. My name is Sophia Ida. I'm in 9th grade. I'm 14, and I was born in El Salvador.
Good morning. My name is Cynthia Lappin. I'm 16 and in 10th grade, and I do competitive makeup design for Thespian.
Good morning, my name is Dylan Floresto. I'm 14 years old and I can dunk on a 12-foot river.
The number gets higher every round.
I was gonna ask why you're in We the People. Just kidding.
Good morning. My name is Sophia Reyes. I am 14 and I know how to play piano, guitar, and the drums.
Would you like to introduce your teacher?
Yes. These are our teachers, this is our teacher, Mrs. Murphy, and her husband, our coach, Mr. Murphy.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, so we are unit 1, yes, and we're gonna do question 3 this morning. So, in the debates during the Philadelphia Convention, Benjamin Franklin asserted there are 2 passions which have a powerful influence on the affairs of men. These are ambition and avarice, the love of power and the love of money. Why did some framers view ambition and greed as threats to government? And how do these concerns shape the Constitution? How did the framers use ideas from philosophers like Montesquieu to divide power and limit the effects of ambition and greed? In what ways do the framers' concerns about concentrated power and wealth remain relevant in today's debates about governmental and corporate accountability? Begin when you're ready.
In the summer of 1787, the founding fathers gathered in Philadelphia with one goal in mind: to create an effective and free government in the new nation.
Benjamin Franklin warned his fellow delegates.
There are two passions which have a powerful influence on the affairs of men. These are ambition and avarice, the love of power and the love of money. This warning, recorded in James Madison's notes on June 2nd, 1787, reflected the framers' deep concern about concentrated power and greed.
It had only been 11 years since the yoke of tyranny. The framers were well aware that men were imperfect and that those in power would be unlikely to give it up.
As James Madison wrote, if men were angels, no government would be necessary. If angels were to govern men, neither external nor internal controls on government would be necessary.
To mitigate these fears, the framers took inspiration from Enlightenment philosopher Montesquieu, who wrote The Spirit of the Laws. Montesquieu emphasized the crucial concept of separation of powers, arguing that power should be a check to power. The founders adapted this constitution.
The federal government's powers were divided into three distinct branches. Article 1 of the Constitution outlines the powers of Congress. Article 2 defines the executive authority of the president. And Article 3 establishes the Supreme Court, the interpreter of the law.
Checks and balances was added to the structure. The president's veto power, Congress's power to impeach, and the judiciary's power of judicial review, established in Marbury v. Madison, were all designed to prevent one branch from becoming dominant.
They also divided power between state and federal governments, as advocated by Montesquieu, even earlier by jurist and political philosopher Johannes Alfusens.
The framers' concerns still apply. In 2010, the Supreme Court's decision in Citizens United versus the Federal Election Committee allowed corporations and unions to spend unlimited amounts of money in political advocacy. This ruling established that corporate spending is protected free speech. Critics argue, however, that this decision allows wealthy interests to exert disproportionate influence on elections, contradicting the framers' vision of government accountability.
Total spending in the 2020 election cycle exceeded $14 billion, a record high that underscores the scale of modern political influence and highlights concerns about concentrated wealth.
Executive overreach remains a concern as well. Modern presidents issue an average of 200 to 300 executive orders per term.
The framers knew that as time went on, new challenges would emerge. To ensure flexibility, they added Article 5, which outlines how to amend the Constitution to adapt to society's ever-changing needs.
Debates about campaign finance reforms, lobbying regulations, and the independence of regulatory agencies continue to reflect the framers' concerns about ambition and avarice. Only 22% of Americans trust the government to do what is right, underscoring the urgent need for public confidence in government institutions.
The framers' experiment is ongoing. Their warnings about the dangers of concentrated power and wealth remain as relevant today as they were in 1787. The challenge is to uphold the principles of limited government and accountability, ensuring that the government they built continues to serve the interests of the people.
We the people. Thank you.
I'm going to return to a lovely turn of phrase that you already used.